All right. Hey, everybody. It is the 12th of April, 2023, and this is Plutus PBL live coding from Gimbal Labs. And this is going to be a slightly different kind of live coding session today because this will be a live demonstration of how to do some of the lessons in module 201 that went live a couple of days ago. This will make the videos maybe a little bit longer than they would have been otherwise, but I'm really hoping that we can build out the interactions. So for everybody who's here, if you see something that raises a question or even gives you an idea about what we could do next, make sure just to jump right in, ask that question. And that's going to kind of give us the real dynamic space to make sure that these are responsive lectures and not just one person, putting a message out there in a particular way. And for anybody who's watching this later, you can join us every Wednesday and Thursday at 14:30 UTC. The links to these sessions are here at Live Coding on the Plutus PBL website. You can register, you can join us, and you can keep up with all past meeting recordings on the same page right here. But let's jump into module 201. This module is about building a front-end distributed application template. And we're going to use plenty of tools that existed, independent of blockchain. For example, Next.js and React. I guess I'm not sure if Next and React were fully fleshed out before blockchain existed, but they've been developed over the last 15 years in parallel with blockchain. And we're going to just use Next.js in this course. And today we're going to look at how to use the mesh library to interact with browser wallets that we've started to use in this course. And we're going to do a little bit of building components that render differently depending on what's in the connected wallet. So if the person whose browser wallet is connected holds a Cardano token, they're going to see something different on the page. In the first lesson, there is a video and an overview about how to get started for the very first time. We're not going to cover all of the details in this lecture today, but if you're brand new to JavaScript, you will have to set up an environment for this, much like you were guided to set up a Plutus development environment in one of the earlier modules. This is how to set up a JavaScript environment. I remember when I installed Node for the first time, I wasn't sure exactly what it was or what I was installing. And I just want to assure everybody, this is really popular software, okay? This is anybody who does any sort of work in JavaScript is going to have Node.js installed on their computer. And so if you have questions about this, just ask anybody within Gimbal Labs, within the PPBL channels, or in sessions like this one, and you're guaranteed to find a lot of well-established tutorials and resources online to help you get going with Node. Now, just like Rust comes with a package manager called Cargo, which maybe you saw in module 101, and just like there's a Haskell package manager called Cabal, maybe you've played with that, or even Nix. We've started to see how Nix handles packages. NPM is the name of the package manager that comes bundled with Node, okay? So when you see npm -- version right here, right, this is checking that we have the package manager installed. It's mentioned right here, Yarn, that there is this other alternative for package management if you're using JavaScript. So Yarn is an alternative tool. And sorry, my screen just froze. Give me 1 second here. Need to try that again. So when you're reading documentation, maybe you've already noticed that you'll often see NPM and Yarn side by side with each other. Ah, my browser is still frozen. What's going on? Try that one more time. There we go. All right. So you might, when you read documentation, see things like this, right? You can use NPM or Yarn. The reason a lot of documentation shows both of these is they're both equally popular tools, okay? And you can use either one. The key thing to understand is that you shouldn't try to use both, right? If you're using NPM in a particular project, just continue to use it. If you're using Yarn, same thing. Don't mix and match unless you want to see all sorts of new exotic errors. So if I head over into my Visual Studio Code, I've got the terminal open here. Just make that a little bigger. Oops. And you can see that I've got Node installed and I've got NPM installed. And if you're paying close attention, you'll see that the versions here are a little bit different than the ones published on the course. That's because I have NVM, which stands for Node Version Manager, which allows me to quickly swap between versions. Okay. And so if you follow the Node instruction documentation that's linked from the course, you'll start by installing NVM, and then you'll use NVM to install each of these. I happen to have Yarn installed as well. Now I'm going to move past this step right now and just remind everybody, if you get stuck installing any or all of these, just ask for help anytime. But what I'm going to do now is actually start to work through some of the steps that are shared here. All right, so I've already got my development environment set up. I have Node installed. There's instructions here for you to create a fork of the PBL 2023 front-end repo. The details for how to do that are provided in lesson 103, so you can follow the steps there. And then once you're ready, you can clone the URL of your repo so that you can use this locally. And I'm just going to pick up with that step right now. Because I am one of the owners of this repo, I'm not going to create a fork. I'm just going to use this one directly for today's demonstration. And because I have SSH keys hooked up with my GitLab account, I can clone a URL that looks like this instead of the one that starts with HTTP. All right, I just want people to know those options are out there. So I'll clone this thing. That step right there is similar to what happens when you run Cabal update, for example, right? And things are downloaded. These are all the packages in our package JSON file are downloaded from the NPM servers. Well, no, sorry. These are, in this case, they're downloaded from the Git repo because I didn't run the next step yet. Sorry. So I'll CD into this directory, and this is where I can run npm install, for example, or Yarn. Either one works. I'll stick to npm for today. And now, sorry, this is the step that I meant to reference a moment ago, where we're now installing all of the packages that are written in this list, this package JSON file right here. All right. And you might recognize the names of some of these as they're installed. If that happens successfully, I should be able to type npm run dev. See that I'm running the project on my local server. So in this case, localhost 3000. And then I can open this URL in a browser. And if you were successful on lesson 201.1, you'll now see this on your screen. This starter has spaces to complete each of the next 3 lessons, 201.2, .3, and .4. And today we're just going to look at numbers 2 and 3. This is the top level route of the project, right? So you see I'm just at localhost 3000. There's no like page linked here. And if I did type a URL, this is just how next works, right? It kind of keeps the formatting, right? My colors are still here, but it just gives me an error and says I can't find that page. We'll talk more about pages a little bit later, but I want to highlight that this is the top level page right here. So when I go back to VS Code and I navigate the project, I'm going to close package.json. I'm going to close my terminal window because I know it's running already. I'm going to go into the source directory and then pages. And within pages, you can start to create other routes if you want to. You'll learn about that as you move deeper into front-end development. But there's always going to be this index page right here. And this is what's appearing in my browser right now. All right, so the top heading says PBL 2023 front-end starter. And that's precisely what we see right here. Underneath the heading is some text. It says this message, if you are viewing this project, et cetera, et cetera. And that's precisely what we see back in the code right here. So what we're able to do is just follow through step by step with what we see on the web page, and we'll try to do each of these steps. So lesson 201.2 says add a connect wallet button here. Let's go find that in the code. I can find those words here. It says lesson 201.2, add a connect wallet button here. And then I can navigate over in the course to lesson 201.2, and I can follow through with the documentation right here. And so this is what we're going to do. And if you're following along so far, my main goal today is just to give you a picture of how React components work. And there was a learning target in module 103 just about reusing code. All right. Every time we import something in a React or a JavaScript project, you're importing something that another developer has already built. So, for example, Chakra UI is a styling library that we happen to be using in this project. There are a lot of other styling libraries or styling frameworks for React. Tailwind is an example. Material UI is an example. The list goes on. There's all sorts of fun ways you can play with this, or you can just write styling components yourself, okay, just using CSS or a layer on top of that. We happen to be using this one. I like teaching with Chakra UI because the names of these components are really descriptive, right? A heading, a text, I can kind of think about what those things are. And not all frameworks behave the same way as this. But each of these, box, divider, link, heading, etc., there's underlying source code for each of these that I'm using every time I import each of these elements. And that's a wonderful thing. That means I don't have to start from scratch. And this is true for all sorts of reusable components, whether it's a styling component or, as in the case of what we're going to do today, a Cardano interaction component. Right? We're about to add this line to the index file that I was just looking at. And when we do, what are we really saying? We're saying, I'd like to use the Cardano wallet component that the mesh team wrote into their React library, because I shouldn't have to rebuild a Cardano wallet button every time I start an app. No, that's something I'd like to just do once and have easy access to it over and over again. And ideally, I won't do it myself either. All right. I'm going to use the code that somebody else wrote so that I can jump into the stuff that I really want to be building. So here's how we do it. Following the instructions at the top of the index.tsx file, I can find these import statements. There they are. This is what I was just looking at in the documentation. And it says on line 5, okay, add a line like this. Now, the reason I don't get any errors when I add this line right here is because I already have mesh SDK/React loaded into this project. Remember that package.json file, the list of all the dependencies for this project. If this list was empty, if I just deleted all of these before running npm install, or if I just got rid of the mesh lines, right, then I would get an error right here because the project would say, hey, I don't know what mesh SDK is. I don't know where that's coming from, right? But just because I added it here and I ran npm install, now it says, okay, mesh SDK React. Yep, we've got that. And you can import whatever you want accordingly. So step 1 is done. We just imported Cardano wallet. Now it says scroll down and find this bit, right? We already looked at this piece right here where it says lesson 201.2. And below that heading, right, below this heading component right here, we're just going to add one simple line, Cardano wallet like this. So that's what I'll do. Now, in my VS Code environment, the autocomplete starts to work for me, right? It knows that I've imported Cardano wallet above. And so it's the first suggestion for me is to use that, right? So I can just press enter, or I can click on this item in this list and it auto-completes for me. Let me not save this yet. Let's now go back to my local host, right? So we haven't changed the local host yet. We don't have that button there. But back over here in VS Code, if I save these changes, save these changes, and I navigate back to the web browser, now I can see that this connect wallet button is here. I can connect it and it works. I can disconnect it just like that. Now, this took a few minutes because I've been giving you a little bit of annotation as we've gone through this, but I hope you can see how efficient this is, right? Once I have a package loaded, import a component, drop it into my file, and we're ready to go. Once you do this once or twice, you can see it's probably going to take you 2 or 3 minutes to add a wallet connection button to your React project. And this is a really big deal. This is the whole principle behind why React is built the way it is. These are components and anybody can write them. And if you write your own carefully, you can share yours with others. You can obviously share them with yourself and not keep writing the same code over and over again. And we're going to look at that in just a moment. But you can also build something that's independent of the rest of a project so you can share it, right? Whether it's in an open source library or just within a team you're working on. So that's everything for this lesson right here, just connecting our browser wallet with a React project via mesh, okay? Who has questions about what we just went through right here?
Do you know how to style the fold out so that it's not transparent?
I've been waiting for somebody to ask about that
It
for a long
is
time, and I'm so glad you finally did. Yeah. And
really
is anybody else dissatisfied with the behavior of this button right now?
so frustrating.
Very good. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So here's a case where, okay, Mesh is providing this component. And Martin, I'm just like you. I'm not yet satisfied with the style of this component, but we used it anyway in this course because we wanted you to experience that too. Okay. And so now, yes, that's a wonderful extension to this current lesson is to find the source code for this Cardano wallet component and see if you can figure out how to change the styling of it. We're going to do that really soon because I want this to look better in the PPBL course. But I really want people to understand the problem statement here too, right? Yeah, what happens? Okay, fine. This is so efficient to use this component, but what happens if I'm not quite happy with the style of that? What options do I have? And one of them is to copy the code and create your own custom version of this button. Another one is to contribute to the open source mesh project, right? That team, it's on their development agenda to make this button more customizable, but they haven't gotten to it yet. And so here's a place where anybody in this course, maybe you're already experienced with React and you're looking for a way to contribute. This is a really good example of how you could go into the mesh code base and maybe make a contribution where you make this button a little bit more dynamic. What other questions do folks have? Cool. Well, once you do it once, I hope it's clear that this is a pretty easy method. And let's follow up on the styling part. And again, right, I know some people here are seeing React for the first time. There's so much you could possibly learn about React. It's a very popular framework. It was originally built by Facebook. So, not everything's bad about Facebook. React is a great open source contribution to just the global developer community, and a lot of people use it. So you can keep learning about that, but hopefully you're seeing just this really high level concept of how efficient it can be to build once we have access to libraries like this. Now, the other thing is we don't have to use components that are built by somebody else. We can do it ourselves, okay? Or we can build our own. That's right. Okay, so Claudio, that's partially true. Let's look for just a second. So the question in the chat says, Mesh is built on top of React. So is it specific to React? And the answer is sort of. So certainly the React components from Mesh SDK are specific to React. However, that's not the only thing that Mesh offers. In fact, there's this core bit right here. And you can use Mesh core without using Mesh React just to get the more general JavaScript functionality. And if we look in the Mesh documentation, this is the Mesh website right here. You'll see that, yeah, there's this React menu item with UI components, for example, Connect Wallet, which is what we were just looking at. We're going to start to use a couple of hooks in the next part of this lesson right now. And yes, anytime you've got one of these hooks, use wallet, use address, et cetera, that's going to be specific to React. Hooks are a feature of React. However, with Browser Wallet, for example, all of these APIs right here, Browser Wallet, Mesh SDK Core, right? Everything on this page is not specific to React. It's specific to JavaScript. And you have to import the Mesh SDK Core library. But everything right here, getting the balance of a wallet, building transactions, etc., you don't have to use a React framework for that. But back in our starter template, now that we've got this connect wallet, it's, not pretty yet. I don't love that UI, right? But it is installed and it works. Now we can move on to the next lesson where we're going to start to customize this component right here. All right. So we've got a message right here in the template that says, hello, I'm a new component. Find me in source components. We'll go do that in just a second. And the instructions for the course are linked right here in lesson 3. What we're going to do right now is make our application render differently, right? Make the page change if the connected wallet holds a particular Cardano token. And everything you need to do this is in the documentation that's already included on the page. This example is minimal, right? It just shows you where to go and what to do without explaining everything, all right? And so the purpose of this video right now is to give you just a little bit of an explanation to accompany what you're going to see right here. And we're going to walk through this step by step. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over to VS Code, and I'm going to find these lines in the same file we were just looking at, pages index.tsx, except now I'm looking for 201.3. Let's look for it. Should be just under where we were with Cardano Wallet. And of course, here it is. This is the section in question. And what we see here is that there is the same kind of heading as before. And this one has what's called a contributor component. And the syntax here looks just like the Cardano Wallet component, right? It's just the name of the thing with this / closing tag, right? This is different. So like right here, I can open up a box and then close that component right here. And everything in between these tags is going to be inside of that box. But sometimes components don't have what are called children, okay? So everything that's highlighted right here, this would all be called the children of this box component, and they're inside of it. But if your component doesn't have any children, you can just combine the opening and closing into one component tag right here. And now that whole thing will just appear on the page. Now, this is imported onto this page. So if I scroll to the top of the page, I'm going to see that contributor component is imported just like Cardano Wallet. But there's a difference. Cardano Wallet was imported from Mesh SDK React, while on the other hand, contributor component is imported from the source directory of this project itself. Let's look for it. So I want to go to the source components directory. I'm already in source, but I'm looking at pages. Now I'd like to open up components. And let's see. There it is, contributor component. And hopefully this is not too surprising. Here's the text that we just saw on the page, right? And so what this allows us to do is, yeah, I've got a single page right here. It's all just one unified page. But inside of this page are some different subcomponents, And this is a really, really nice practice. This is absolutely the recommended way to use React, is to break down the pages you're building into sets of components where each one has a particular purpose, right? So I don't want to worry about this whole page. I just want to worry about this box right here, just this. Watch. I don't have to think about that long file. This is 80 lines of code right here. I don't want to scroll up and down through these 80 lines. I just want to look at what matters to me. Right? Let's change the text. I want to focus on this component. And if I save those changes and I go back to my browser window, you'll see that the text right here has changed. All right. So this is critical. If you understand this part, you're well on your way to understanding React and building components. And when we think about the shareability of this thing, look, this is a nice short file. This is easy to use this over and over again. For example, I could just make 5 quick copies of this contributor component. I could save that page. There it is, 5 times. Right? And if I change the words just once, off screen, I'm just changing the words from I want to focus on this component. I change it once, and that changes in all 5 instances. So this gets really convenient. And I'm showing you right now a really trivial example. Okay. But now imagine I'm not just going to make copies of this component on the same page. I want to use this component on different pages, or maybe even in different projects that I'm working on. Now I only have to build it once, and I reuse that code over and over again. So that's exciting. Now, what are we going to do with this? It's not enough just to have some basic text here. What we really want is to make this a dynamic component. And here's how. All right, so we just covered step 2, reviewing the imports. We can see the contributor component. I just opened that file, which is at this path right here, source, components, contributor component. And we found this thing, and I just demonstrated how to change the text on line 7. And I can see those changes in my browser. But what I'd really like to do is make this component a little bit more dynamic. What we're going to do in this component is check if the connected wallet holds a PBL 2023 contributor token like you minted in the very first lesson of this course. First thing we're going to do is change the imports. We're not going to add another Cardano wallet button inside of this component, but we are going to use a couple of those React hooks that we saw in the documentation a few minutes ago. So that's where I'm going to start. Change my imports. Notice right here, I don't know if you can see the color difference on my screen, but Cardano wallet here, it just doesn't look like it's as bright as the words box or text. That's because I'm not using Cardano wallet yet. And if I did use it like this, you could see how it lights up, right? It gets a little brighter when I start to use that. All right. But I'm not using that. I want to replace Cardano wallet with these 2 hooks. There we go. Use assets and use wallet. Now, how do I use these? Hooks are like a famous idea in React that are really hard to understand at first. We're not gonna cover everything about hooks right now. And this is part of the learn by doing approach that we really want to have running here in Gimbal Labs. Okay. I believe the best way to understand what a hook is just to start practicing using it. And as you start to see when and where hooks are used and how easy they're going to make your life, then you can dig in and start to understand what they are a little bit better. But there is a link to the documentation right here. The first thing I need to do is initialize these hooks. I need to say inside of my component that I'm going to be using these things. And I need to define what parts of each I'm going to use. Use wallet actually provides us with a couple of different data points. And one of them is whether or not a wallet is currently connected. All right, so connected will return a Boolean. False if there's no wallet connected, and true if there is a wallet connected. On the other hand, this wallet assets part right here, I could have named this whatever I want. I just need to create an instance of the use assets hook so that I can then use it later on. Let's see what that means in practice. I'm going to copy these two lines. And over here in my component, I got to be careful with where I put these hooks. I want it to be inside of the component, right? I'm building a component right here called contributor component. Everything inside of these curly braces, open and closed, is part of that component. But not everything that's in a component gets rendered on the screen. The only thing that actually shows up on the web page is everything inside of our return statement right here. All right, so after some other stuff happens, we're going to return a box that has this color and that has this text in it. But sometimes some additional code has to run to decide exactly what that component is going to look like. And so that's why inside of the component, but outside of the return statement, I'm going to paste those two lines I just copied from the documentation. All right. This is the logic that's running in the background under the hood. Now that I've initialized those hooks, I can use them. And so all I'm going to do is add one more line inside of my component. It's this line right here. I'm going to copy this line and paste it into my code. And then let's talk about what it's doing. Okay. So this is inside of the return statement. That means that line 11 that I just pasted right here is going to make something appear in the UI, right? These words are going to appear on the page. But what words are going to appear on the page? Well, it depends. It depends on whether a wallet is connected. Remember, this is a Boolean. It returns true or false. And that's, if you were at live coding last Thursday, you already had a preview of this. But here's a critical design pattern about how JavaScript works inside of a React component. What we're able to do is inside of the return statement, add a new set of curly brackets and run some logic inside of those brackets. And this logic is a pretty simple one. This can get a lot more advanced than this, and it will as you start to look at more advanced examples. But this is a really simple question, right? It says, hey, look, is a wallet connected? Question mark, yes or no, right? If yes, you do the first thing, everything before the colon right here. And if no, if false, you do the second thing. So this says, hey, is a wallet connected? If yes, write a wallet is connected. And if no, write this string, no wallet is connected. Now, again, I'm talking about this a lot, but think about how long it takes to implement this once you know how to do it. I just saved this. I'm going to go back over, make sure I save the latest here. Good. I'm going to go back over to my front end template. And now you could see those words are on the page, right? I still have the C here. Here's I could change these words, right? Live coding demo. There we go. So instead of the words C right here, it says no wallet is connected. Okay, well, what do you think is going to happen when I connect a wallet? I hope this works. I'm going to connect my NAMI. And now it says a wallet is connected. If I disconnect, it goes back to saying no wallet is connected. Cool. And if you're really thinking about this, I hope this feels like a little bit of a miracle to you. We put this connect wallet button on the page, right? It's that connect wallet button we're using is in this file over here, right here. But then in a different component where we're not even using that connect wallet button, it can get the state of the application, right? It can find out if a wallet is connected. And that's what this use wallet hook is doing. It's giving us a hook into how our application is behaving right now from a different component. All right. And this is so powerful because we're able to make one thing happen right here. And we're able to see the results of this action over here in this component here. It's a big deal. And I hope this initial way of looking at it makes sense. Now, let me pause there. What questions or things do you notice? Juan, what do you say?
So what is the miracle? What is the code behind the miracle? What is behind that a wallet is connected? Is there any code?
Yes, there is. There's a lot of code. Great question. Okay. So what's making this happen for us, right? Like this file looks very simple, doesn't it? It's 14 lines, right? But when I import use wallet, there's a lot of stuff happening here. Look, first of all, when I put a mouse over it, there's all sorts of stuff I'm not even using. Name, connecting, connected, wallet, et cetera, et cetera. Wow. Okay. Now, where is all of that coming from? It's coming from the Mesh SDK React library. Okay. Now, if you want to look at this source code, you can actually find it. When I ran npm install, this folder showed up, node modules. And there's a lot of stuff in this folder. And if I scroll down, let's see, I can find Mesh SDK right here at Mesh SDK. I can see there's a core and a React subdirectory. Those each correspond to these two different imports, right? Core and React. Okay. And if I look in the React one, node modules, always a lot of stuff in this folder. I can look in React. I can look in the source, and I can try to find this component. Oh, that looks good. Cardano wallet. Oh, here's the button. Ooh, this is where I might want to go if I want to see how that button works and change the styling. That's pretty cool. All right, so all this code is written, and I don't have to rewrite it because they built it for me. But again, if I don't like the style, I can fix it. All right, so that's components. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for hooks. Hooks. Which one was I just using right there? Use wallet. Let's find it. Oh, once again, I did that. Use wallet. That looks good. All right. So this hook has this inside, and maybe it makes sense, right? It's defining the hook as a set of stuff. Oh, and then we bump into this other new concept, use context. This is a slightly more advanced React concept, and we're going to get to this. This is actually already used in the PBL course, and you'll start to see it. But for now, I just want you to know that's what's being used. So we had to import that from React. And there's this other thing called wallet context, which looks like it's defined in mesh/context. So we would have to find that. Let me see what that looks like. Wallet context looks like this. Okay. Now, all this source code, you're not going to understand it all at once. Nobody does the first time they look at it, right? But the concept here is that a lot of this stuff has been built. And just to give you an idea for what context is doing, this gives context to our entire application. Okay, so basically what use context allows you to do is wrap your entire application in a component, essentially, that holds on to certain data, right? And so I want you to imagine when you log into any website you've ever logged into, and when you change pages, it still knows who you are, what account is logged in, right? That's using something like context, all right? It's the state of the application. We're going to go a lot deeper into this. Okay, this concept is brand new. I don't want you to get stuck on this for right now. I just want you to know that there will be chances to look at it. And to Juan's question, where's the magic coming from? It's coming from these import statements, right? Because we're using code that somebody else has written. There's another question from Claudio in the chat. Can you have more than one wallet connected? The way Mesh is set up right now, and the connect wallet button, the answer is no. But there's ways you can play with this. It goes a little bit beyond the scope of what we can talk about right now, but I want you to imagine context, which I just introduced. It can get confusing for an application if you try to connect two different wallets at once, because in Mesh, for example, we are then able to look at the UTXOs in the connected wallet. And if it's looking at the UTXOs in two different wallets, and it doesn't know which ones are which, like that can get a little bit different. So currently, I'm not aware of a library that allows you to connect two different wallets to the same page at the same time. And I think that's a good thing. That's a cool research question that people can follow up on, is like playing around with, is it possible? If so, why would you want it? And what could you do with it? Now, this lesson today has two different audiences. Okay, one audience for the work we're doing right now is anybody who wants to be a front-end developer building Cardano applications. Okay, the purpose of this lesson is for anybody who wants to go deeper to have a starting point. And I hope that you have questions and ways to follow up after this lesson today. But not everybody is going to be a front-end developer. Just like not everybody is going to write smart contracts in Plutus TX, right? And that's a good thing. Some people here in this meeting or watching this video later might want to just specialize as smart contract developers. And maybe you don't want to specialize in React. It's still good, I believe, to just kind of understand some of the guidelines for what's possible, right? When we build a front end, so that you can have that in your head as you're building a smart contract. And also, some people might not even end up being developers. Maybe you want to just start your own project or be a project manager, and you're not going to be writing the code directly. What I really hope this lesson provides you with is a way of starting to understand what's possible, right? If you are a startup founder or you are a project manager, it means a lot to developers when at least you have some of the concepts that they're trying to talk about. and that you can speak their language and turn plans into reality. Okay. So we're not actually done with lesson 201.3 yet. Let's jump back to the description here. We just did this part where we made the component dynamic, but we have a bit more to do. Whoa, Newman from NYC. Nice. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you guys have a great time there at NFT NYC. So now that we've tried this, connecting and disconnecting our wallet, now let's do a little bit more. What we can do is we can get a list of the tokens in the connected wallet. And to do that, we're going to use this other hook that we initialized, use assets. If I go back to my source code, you can see that connected is kind of lit up, right? Because it's being used, but wallet assets is grayed out a little bit because we're not using it yet. And if I put a mouse over it, we can see that message. Wallet assets is declared, but its value is never read. Let's change that. Let's put a list of assets on the page. And the way we're going to do this to start is just by grabbing one more line. It says, now try this. Right? And if you look closely, the only difference between the code here and what I have already is this line. I'm going to copy this line and drop it in right here. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to head back to the browser. It doesn't look different yet because no wallet is connected. So it can't know what assets are in the wallet if it doesn't know what wallet to look at. Let's connect a wallet. And now something else happens. Okay. Now when I connect this wallet, I can see that there are some assets. In this case, there's only one additional asset in this wallet. There are 100 test gimbal tokens. What I can do is I actually have a bunch of different NAMIs because I try a bunch of different things on pre-prod. So I can change my account. This wallet has a lot of different assets in it. So if I disconnect and then reconnect with the other wallet, whoa, there's a long list of assets. Now, probably this is not user friendly, right? If I built an application and said, hey, my app is really finally going to bring Cardano to the masses, I wouldn't want it to look like this, right? This is just raw data that the use assets hook can give us. But really, we probably don't want all of this to appear on the page. And so remember earlier, I showed you that we can return the part that we want to be rendered in our application, but we can also do other stuff in our component before we get to that return statement. And so what we're going to do now is add a little bit more logic right here that does stuff before creating the component that's rendered on the page. Let's see what that looks like. So one more time, I'm going to jump back to the documentation. We did step 5. We got some raw data, but it's not really user friendly. So now let's bring our page to life a little bit more. And notice that there's going to be a couple more new things before we get to the return statement. We already initialized our hooks. And what I'm going to do now is just copy these lines and add them to my source code. And then we'll talk through them a little bit. Copy those. I'm going to drop those right here. Now I got some errors. I see there's a red line under use state and asset and use effect and asset again. Why? Why am I getting red lines, some kind of errors from each of these? If I save the page right here and I go back to my front end, it doesn't look pretty anymore. But what does this error say? Not defined. Right? Use state is not defined. Well, yeah, of course it's not. I'm writing this line that says use state, but it can't find that. It doesn't know what use state I'm talking about. Okay. And so if I go back to the example over here, you'll see that before we get to this part, there's some new imports at the top of the page. Check it out. Yeah, if I want to use something called use state, I either have to write it somewhere else in my file, or I got to import it from outside of the file. And that's exactly what this line does right here for use state and use effect. Those are part of React. So just like the mesh team can write new React hooks, React comes with some hooks of its own. And two of the most popular ones are use effect and use state. All right. So watch this. I'm going to copy these two lines, these additional imports. I'm going to go back to my editor. There's red lines right now because these things are undefined, but watch what happens after I add these import statements. Red lines disappear because now use state is defined, use effect is defined, and asset is actually part of the Mesh SDK core. This is what's called a type, okay? In this case, the asset type is defined inside of Mesh, and we're able to just import that type definition. Because what's an asset? Well, on Cardano, there's two things I need to know. I need to know the unit, which is the Mesh term for the, what's the word I'm looking for? Asset ID. Okay, so the policy ID and the token name, you put those together into one string. That's called the asset ID. And that's what our unit is right here. And then how many of those, how many tokens of that unit do I have? Quantity. All right, so now our imports look better. Let me just save this again and navigate back to my browser. You can see that the errors have disappeared, but I'm still not doing anything yet with this new logic, right? I can load again and whoops, I can see that I still just have this mess of raw data. All right, so what are these hooks doing? Let's take a look. First of all, use state is, it's the variable, use state is the hook that allows us to set a variable that might change after a page is loaded. Okay. So in this case, connected PPBL 2023 token. It's some asset that may or may not be in the user's wallet. And think about it. It's impossible to know if there is a PPBL 2023 token when a wallet is not yet connected. How am I supposed to say that without a connected wallet, right? And when somebody loads a page for the first time, of course, their wallet is not going to be connected. So what we want is we want to create a user experience where once somebody connects a wallet, the page updates, right? And maybe shows some additional information. And we're going to look closely at what this looks like in just a moment, but maybe you already noticed it. When I connect a wallet, it's not like the whole page reloads, right? A lot of the page doesn't change and it just stays there. It's just the part in question changes a little bit, right? Oh, that one sentence where it says a wallet is connected versus no wallet is connected. Yeah, that part changes. And we all expect this. We've all used websites before that have this behavior. How does it work? Well, if you're using React, this is how it works. You use hooks like use state and use effect to make changes to only some parts of what's on the page without rebuilding the entire page. All right, so what this is the connected token, right? If there is a connected token, we want to know what it is and we want to reference it on the page. We want to be able to talk about it. So what is that token? Well, I know two things about it. The first thing I know is that it has a policy ID. And this right here is the pre-prod policy ID of the token that you minted in module 100. You could look up this policy ID on, you could look up this policy ID on preprod.cardanoscan.io, and you would see a list of all of the PBL 2023 tokens that have been minted so far. And so what does this say? Use effect. This is a hook that makes a change happen depending on if another change has happened. All right. I mentioned this a few minutes ago. I can't know if there are PBL 2023 tokens until someone connects a wallet. And so I'm waiting for somebody to connect a wallet. And if that happens, I can look in that wallet. Well, what am I looking for? In this case, I want to look at the assets in the wallet. And here's a case where a hook is provided for that. So use assets is provided by Mesh. It's running in the background. And what happens is every time a wallet gets connected, use assets is going to update accordingly. And the value of wallet assets, which we're looking at down here, is going to change. And we already saw this happening, right? When I loaded my page, there was nothing in that list because there were no wallet assets. But once I connected a wallet, all that data just appears on the page. So this hook, the first thing you should look at if you ever see use effect, and I'm going a little bit deep right now. It's okay. If this part is losing you, it's okay. You can come back and revisit this part later on, okay? But I want you to just have a little bit of an idea about how a use effect hook works. This list right here, the square brackets, right? This is an array or a list, and it could have many things in it. I could put like connected in here as well, okay? And so what this says right now is whenever wallet assets changes, or whenever the connected state changes, do all of this. This is called a callback function. Don't worry about that phrase, but you will start to see it, okay? What do we do? When this use effect hook is triggered by some other value changing, in this case, wallet assets, then we say this, do this, take those wallet assets and filter them so that the first 56 characters, right, the beginning, a substring, right, the beginning of our unit for an asset matches the policy ID in question. Now, this is a lot to show all at once, right? This filter function, this is a JavaScript function. You can look it up. Substring is another JavaScript function. And learning how to use all of this, I'm sure there's some follow-up that we're going to have to do right here. Okay, so when it comes to this part right here, the actual JavaScript logic, if this is brand new to you, I encourage you to take your time, okay? But we're using a little bit of JavaScript right now. And my intention is just to give you an overview of what it's doing, even if maybe you wouldn't be able to write it yourself yet. If you are experienced with React and JavaScript, hopefully this logic looks familiar to you. We say, okay, make a list of only the assets that have this policy ID. Cool. And if there is anything in that list, right, set the connected PPBL token, this, right, which matches this right here, set the value of that connected PPBL 2023 token to the first element in this list. Well, we talked a little bit about indexes last Thursday. And so here's another chance to start to think about this. Filter is going to give me an array or a list. And what I'm supposing is that everybody minted one PPBL 2023 token, right? So for most people, how many items are going to be filtered out of this list? It should be just one. And to get the first item in a list, I use index 0, right? So this bit right here, if you're unfamiliar with that, just get used to it. In computer science, we start counting from 0. So if there's one item in a list or one item in an array, I get that item from index 0. Now, this doesn't handle the case where somebody might hold more than one PPBL 2023 token, right? What if we filtered the list of assets and there were 3 items in the list? Well, this would still only give you the first one. On the other hand, what if this list is empty right here, right? What if filter doesn't find anything that matches this policy ID? Well, then PPBL 2023 would just be an empty list, which looks like this, right? An empty list just has open and closing brackets like that. And if we have an empty list, this will just remain undefined. It won't pass anything there. Okay. But for most cases, we're looking for 0 or 1 of these. And if there is one, we grab it and we set the connected PPBL 2023 token to that. Let's see if this part works. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go back to the documentation. Now we've implemented these hooks. We pulled in asset and use effect and use state. And now down here, we're going to change the question we're asking. Above, the question was, is a wallet connected? And we got a message, yes or no. Here we're asking a different question. Is there a connected PPBL 2023 token? If so, do this. And if not, do this. Now I kept it kind of boring, right? I used green for yes and red for no. Stop, go. Okay. And instead of just using text like I did up here, you can create a component inside of those parentheses. In this case, I'm going to make a box. And this box is going to have a green background. BG is for background. And these words are going to be inside of that box. And if there's no PPBL 2023 token, red box with the words, you don't have it. So I'm going to grab this bit right here, copy it, come back to my code, and just replace these 2 lines with that. I'm going to get rid of the connected part, and I don't want all that raw data. Okay. Save that. Navigate back over to the starter. And now, because a wallet's not connected, of course it says you do not have the token. After I connect a wallet, let's see what happens. I still don't have the token. And that's true. I don't have a student token in this wallet. So let's go find one that maybe does. It's not that one. Not that one. Oh, and this one is locked. Okay. So I actually don't have any contrib tokens. Maybe I can go mint one. Let's try it. So I know I haven't minted one with this wallet yet. I'm going to head back over to module 100. And oops, I had to connect a wallet to use this. Now, all of this, right? The way these just turned green, you saw this at the beginning of the course. All of this is coming from logic that looks very similar to what I'm showing you today. All right, that's how we got this to work, and you'll start to continue to see this. So I'm connected. It has Lovelace, but it doesn't have the token, which means I'm allowed to mint one. Has anybody chosen live coding yet? Looks like no. Okay, I'll choose that one. So I'm going to mint one of these. Okay, it'll take a few minutes for me to get that token in my wallet. I can watch the interactions here. Let's give that just a moment. While we're waiting for that, who else has questions? That was, you just watched a lot of stuff. I'm wondering what people are thinking. There we go. Okay, so a minute ago, it looks like I got a new asset. And if I look in the wallet, there it is. My PPBL 2023 live coding. Cool. Let's go back to the starter. And let's try it again. Connect a wallet. Boom, I have the token. Cool. And I could do other stuff with this as well. Maybe I do want to know some of the details of that token. Okay, so I could do something like this. So this is going to be my connected PPBL 2023 token. Remember how we said that this thing is an asset? Assets have unit and quantity. So first, let's just try this. This null to part just allows me to insert line breaks, and the JSON stringify allows me to take raw data and just put it on the page. Okay. So if I save this, the no token message hasn't changed, but if I now connect a wallet again, notice that I can see this asset bit right here. And another thing I noticed, this is some feedback for the mesh team that I got to pass along to them. You see how asset right here, the type only has unit and quantity, right? But actually, when I look at it on the page here, yeah, I see unit, which looks good, and I see quantity, okay, but it looks like it has these other three things. And actually that asset name right there is really helpful to me. Maybe I just want to put the asset name on the page. So watch this, right? If I don't want to just put all of that data, I can just say connected PPBL 2023 token dot asset name. Okay. Now I actually get a red line here, an error, because asset name is not part of this type definition. But if I save this and I go back over here and connect a wallet again, it actually does work. Okay, so now you can see the name of my token. And if I wanted to make this a little bit prettier, because asset name is just a string, I don't have to use JSON stringify. And here's a case where maybe I want to use text, and maybe I want to make this text a little bit more dramatic. I can change the font size to like really big, and I could give it a color. I don't know what color is not going to clash with that green. Here I can make the green a little bit. I'll make the green really dark, and then I'll make the color a light yellow, for example. And I'm playing around right now. What I'm trying to demonstrate right now is how you can just go and start to play around with chakra and how that works. There we go. Nice big token name. Cool. All right. But that's it for today. That takes us to the end of lesson 201.3, which was the goal for today. Let's just scroll down. We added the connected part. We got the list of tokens. We checked to see if that list holds the PPBL 2023 token. And we made a colored box appear on the page if it does or it doesn't. And that's what we just looked at. So there's a link at the bottom of this lesson to a deeper React tutorial if you want to keep going with React. But I'm really hoping that what you saw today is enough that you feel confident just to go through this documentation on your own. Everything I just showed you, try it yourself, and then see what questions you have. And when you do have new questions, make sure to bring those to live coding in future sessions and start to do some other experiments, because we've only played with a couple of the hooks and the logic that Mesh provides for us. Yeah, Claudio, that's exactly right. So there's a type in Mesh called asset extended. And so that was another thing I tried. And this is when I realized that we got to submit a little bug request to the Mesh team. Because I agree, what I really want to do right here is just import asset extended like this. And that part's great. But then if I type asset extended right here, I get a different error because it actually, let's just see. Yeah, what was that error? You see this, and this is where my understanding breaks down a little bit. I don't understand why I'm not able, like I'm able to import asset extended. It's fine for that to be the type in my use state, but what wallet, I guess the problem is really right here. The use assets hook expects us to have this asset type. And I think they need to update the use assets hook to allow us to use asset extended here. So that's great. That's good for us to discover that and pass that feedback along to the Mesh team. And I'm betting that they already know about it. So yeah, soon enough, we'll be able to do what I just showed you and use asset extended instead. That's correct. In the use wallet, you can get a wallet which has get assets. Oh, that's it. Use wallet. Yeah, where did you find the get assets part? Yeah, well, we'll look for that. I'm a wallet is browser wallet. If a wallet is, oh yeah. Okay, so I used the hook. You're exactly right. Yeah, so you're exactly right. Let's try that. Let's see if we can make that. So we can import wallet from use wallet. And then instead of the use assets hook right here, I can replace all of that with wallet dot get assets. Then I can change asset to asset extended. Same thing with this one. Whoops. And this one. And then I think I need to just, let's try this. Const. Oh, but this is a promise, right? So I would have to await. All right. So there's a great answer here, but it's going to take us actually down a rabbit hole that introduces a bunch of concepts that I don't want to overwhelm people with yet right here. We will get to promises. We will get to asynchronous functions and all of that good stuff. But yeah, Claudio, you're on the right track. And there's just a little bit more we would have to do here in order to be able to use this. Great start. And you're a step ahead of me in the chat. Yep. Yeah, good. Very good. Yeah, but it's what you are often gonna see. And here I could find maybe we'll start with this tomorrow because I know we're at time right now. But it's very, very common in a use effect hook to make a call to an outside API, right? Somebody else's server. And whenever I'm trying to get information from another API, I might have to wait for that data to be sent to me, right? And maybe my web page is going to load, but the data didn't arrive yet. And that's what asynchronous functions are for. That's what this await word is for. And that word promise that you see in the chat from Claudio and that you just saw on my screen, that's a promise is used to handle, right? The remote server says, yeah, I'll send you that. I'll get it to you as soon as I can, right? And so we can add that and kind of handle some of that functionality in a dynamic interface. All right, but my intention was to just go through a starting point today. I'm sure that I've overwhelmed some people here, but I really wanted to give you an initial way to look at this. Okay, so we have this now recorded. You can revisit this, and I really hope people will take the time to try just these steps on your own, see what it feels like to get this far, and then bring your questions. I'm excited to see what we come up with next. How's everybody feeling?
I think it's awesome. It's great to have this step-by-step process of coding. I think it's awesome. This is a matter of just playing with it by ourselves and start seeing the results by in our own systems.
Thanks, partner.
Thank you for all this.
All I ask is that as you're working through the documentation, if you see a typo, speak up, okay? Let me know. Or if something is not clear yet, or you think it could be described in an easier or better way, I really want this course to become a community effort. So all of your feedback, all of your edits, revisions are welcome anytime. Looking forward to
By the
your
way,
stories.
kudos to Claudio.
You know it. You know it.
Yeah.
Yep. There's
Amazing.
some mastery data starting to show up on chain, everybody. Martin, what do you think?
Yeah, I had a problem last week with the token not showing
Oh
up.
yeah, and I got your merge request, and I was just working on a couple other things before making sure that that covered all the edge cases.
Yeah, I was like, did I do it the right way? So
I'll take a look at that one, and actually maybe if there's time tomorrow, that would be good to look at the update to that logic. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna jump over to the garage in the Gimbal Labs Discord to do a little diagramming with Steve. Folks are welcome to join in there. Otherwise, tomorrow we will pick it up at lesson 4. All right, where we do go to, I mentioned promises and these outside services. We're actually going to start to see a couple of async functions tomorrow when we start to query the blockchain beyond our wallet. And so that's coming up tomorrow. The video from today will be posted in lessons 2 and 3. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody does with this stuff. Thanks for being here today.